Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Dems flip out at what Trump just put in front of the White House. It's never been done before. When you have a non-career politician as a president who only works for the citizen of this great nation who place their trust in him, you can bet that he'll bring a lot of needed change to the White House. Although we've seen endless examples of that in his first year, as he checked each promise off his list that he made to Americans, now we're seeing him make massive visual changes to the People's House itself, where he calls home. There's a massive new installment going right outside the White House, and certain citizens who don't agree with him and furious about his sudden, unexpected decision. President Trump is on a mission to make America great again as his biggest goal while in office. He's already proven to accomplish that plan with bringing back jobs and resuscitating the deeply devastated economy. He has managed to accomplish these things in record time by putting his focus on massive issues and oversights that his predecessor did not, mostly because they weren't important to Barack Hussein Obama, who had misplaced priorities. However, there's one issue deep and dear to Trump which affects the heart of America that he's putting an incredible focus on by what he's having installed right outside the White House. Regardless of what it represents, his racist detractors are irate that he would do this, without realizing what they're really saying and hating on this important installation. This pretty much proves that the president, no matter what incredible bipartisan thing he does, is judged for all the wrong reasons no matter what. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, so he just sticks to what he knows and his heart is right. Trump has made it known that there has been a long-ignored epidemic in this country that needs immediate attention. Nothing is killing Americans more than the opioid crisis, which he has made his personal mission to combat while in office. While death by this addiction is certainly unfortunate, the true victims are the ones left behind and alone after losing a loved one caught in this dangerous epidemic that's spiraled out of control. Those are the people who have been ignored but are now getting the attention they deserve with what Trump has done for them outside the White House. Washington Post reports. The White House next month will host a memorial installation that will depict the 22,000 people who died in 2015 from a prescription opioid overdose. The memorial will be hosted by the National Park Service and the nonprofit National Safety Council and will be placed on the White House ellipse, home of the National Christmas Tree. This stirring exhibit will be open to the public from April 12 through April 18 to educate visitors on the devastating impact of the opioid crisis, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said during her opening remarks at the press briefing Tuesday. It is part of the National Safety Council's Stop Everyday Killers campaign and shows a wall of engraved pills depicting the faces of people who died. Next to them is a note memorializing their lives. It has toured in other U.S. cities, including Chicago and Pittsburgh. These stories are tough to hear, and this exhibit will be an intensely emotional and somber experience, Sanders said. But it's also a reminder that lives are at stake, and we must take action to end the plague of addiction that is ravaging communities all across our nation. The attention needs to be on this immense issue, but Trump's detractors want to keep it on themselves, have attempted to do so by creating racism in this important memorial. According to The Root. Can someone tell me where the crack memorial is in Washington, D.C.? Seriously, where's the wall with the list of names of all the people gone too soon to the drug that ravaged the black community? Or, even more so, where can I find the heroin memorial in Baltimore? Baltimore has been pegged the heroin capital of America, with as many as 1 out of 10 residents struggling with the highly addictive narcotic. So surely there is some kind of commemorative statue to honor the lives lost to this epidemic. The whitest news to ever come out of the White House happened Tuesday as the president of little pickup trucks with fat tires announced how happy he was to announce the addition of an opioid memorial in President's Park coming in April. I am baffled by the casual causality of this shit. You'd think they'd have enough awareness to note the racial disparity in sentencing during the crack epidemic versus the opioid epidemic to say that a memorial for addicts lost to a drug that disproportionately affects white people might be a bridge too far. It's a sick assertion for this liberal, racist to make sense. They would attack him tenfold had he done the same kind of memorial in black neighborhoods. Drugs don't discriminate, they are all an issue that plagues all parts of society now more than ever, regardless of race. African Americans are as hooked on opioids as whites, as the #1 drug epidemic in America. If Trump were to target crack use among black communities, they would condemn him for claiming blacks were predominantly more addicted to crack than whites, even though they themselves just admitted it in their argument against a good thing he's doing now that Obama never cared about. Trump has a genius plan to rig next election and liberals can't stop it. According to Mother Jones, President Trump is planning to rig the 2020 election, just like the rigged 2016 election, with the help of Russians, of course. In a piece titled Hidden Figures, How Donald Trump is Rigging the Census, they theorize that the president is going to wield his presidential power to rig the election, and other political issues, in his favor. The only problem with their logic is that they believe he's going to rig the census, to win the election, when the census results won't go into effect until after the election is over. Mother Jones starts the piece with some very heart-wrenching narrative about how the workers assigned to get a handle on those in low-visibility housing were mistaken for ICE, and how depressing the conditions are to those illegals who live in poverty. Quezada and San Juan were working with the Central Valley Immigrant Integration Collaborative, a network of organizations embarking on a pilot program to identify low-visibility housing in Fresno in preparation for the 2020 census. That's why Quezada and San Juan were in Fresno, where 70% of residents are people of color, 20% are immigrants, and 1/3 live in poverty, making it one of the hardest places in the country to count. Only 73% of residents in the East Fresno neighborhood they were canvassing mailed back their census forms in 2010, if they ever received them in the first place. They go on to explain how the census, which takes place in the same year as the upcoming presidential election, is something that will dictate how the government budget is allocated. It will also potentially redraw the congressional districts, and that, as we well know, can rearrange the political landscape in Washington. The fear among the left seems to be that illegals won't get a fair shake when it comes to government funding and a voice in Washington. To that, conservatives say it's about time. However, Mother Jones goes on to explain. But with the Trump administration in charge, voting rights advocates fear the undercount could be amplified, shifting economic resources and political power toward rural, white, and Republican communities. The census is scheduled to begin on April 1, 2020, in the middle of the presidential election season. Of all the ways democracy is threatened under President Donald Trump, a blind eye to Russian meddling in elections, a rollback of voting rights, a disregard for checks and balances, an unfair and inaccurate census could have the most dramatic long-term impact. It's one of those issues that's often the least sexy, least discussed in certain corners, and yet the ramifications for communities of color and vulnerable communities are so high in terms of what's at stake for economic power and political power, says Vanita Gupta, who led the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division under President Barack Obama and now directs the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. A perfect storm is threatening the 2020 census, says Terry Ann Lowenthal, a former staff director for the House Subcommittee on Census and Population. Budget cuts enacted by the Trump administration and the Republican Congress forced the Bureau to cancel crucial field tests in 2017 and 2018. The Bureau's director resigned last June, and the administration has yet to name a full-time director or deputy director. The next census will also be the first to rely on the Internet. The Census Bureau will mail households a postcard with instructions on how to fill out the form online. If they don't respond, it will send field workers, known as enumerators, to knock on their doors. But in an effort to save money, There will be 200,000 fewer enumerators than in 2010, increasing the likelihood that households without reliable internet access will go uncounted. Enumerators will carry tablets instead of paper forms, and the reliance on technology raises cybersecurity fears in the wake of high-profile hacks and foreign election interference. They are putting together the census under a pall of uncertainty, says Kenneth Pruitt, who directed the 2000 census. How much money, who's going to be in charge, what are we going to do on the core questionnaire itself? To do that under such a level of uncertainty is literally unprecedented. And then, on Monday night, the Trump administration dropped the biggest bombshell of all. The Commerce Department, which oversees the Census Bureau, announced that it would include a question about U.S. citizenship on the census for the first time since 1950. Civil rights groups say the move will cause immigrants, particularly undocumented ones, to avoid responding to the census for fear of being reported to immigration authorities. The result will be a massive undercount of the Latino population, leading to reduced political power and federal resources for places like Fresno. The state of California, which has the country's largest immigrant population, quickly filed a lawsuit against the administration over the question. The left is concerned that the census will not only allow the government to enforce the laws already in place, but they're also afraid that if the proper amount of illegals' voices aren't heard, they might not get a say in what happens in government. They also fear that if the high-density areas don't keep their numbers up, like the one being filmed in the video above, the heartland might get a more significant say in who is elected president in 2024.